9 rigid frame giants, ranked by how much rock they can carry in a single load. We start at 220 tons with the machine that set the modern standard, and we end with the heaviest haul truck ever built, a 4-axle monster moving 450 tons of ore per trip. Along the way, a locomotive engine bolted to a mining truck, a twin-engine drivetrain, and tires taller than the crews who service them. The Komatsu 830E is where the Ultra class begins. Komatsu built it to work the same pits as the Caterpillar 793, and through the 2000s it became one of the most common haul trucks on the planet, running in Australia's Pilbara, Canada's oil sands, and Chile's copper belt. It is not the biggest name on this list, but it is the baseline every bigger machine gets measured against. A large share of the ultra-class trucks in service today trace their layout straight back to this one. The numbers here start the arms race this whole video climbs. Payload sits at 220 tons, moved by a diesel-electric drivetrain that pairs a Komatsu 18-cylinder engine, making roughly 2,600 horsepower with electric wheel motors. No mechanical transmission, no gearbox to wear out under that load. Loaded weight tops 400 tons, yet the truck still manages close to 40 miles an hour on a level haul road. What kept the 830E in production for 2 decades wasn't raw size, it was that diesel-electric layout. Fewer moving parts in the drivetrain means fewer breakdowns at the bottom of a pit, an hour's drive from the nearest workshop. Stand next to an 830E, and the tires alone reach past head height, each one about 11 feet tall, taller than a basketball center, standing on another player's shoulders. The truck runs about 42 feet long and stands over 20 feet high at the cab, a 2-story house on wheels that weighs as much as a loaded jumbo jet. If the 830E is the baseline, the Caterpillar 793 is the benchmark everyone else gets compared to. Caterpillar rolled it out in the early 90s and has kept refining it ever since, and the F model, introduced in 2011, is still one of the best-selling ultra-class trucks Cat has ever built. Where Komatsu went diesel-electric, Cat stuck with a mechanical drivetrain married to its own engine, betting that a stiffer connection between engine and wheels would win on fuel burn and maintenance cost over the truck's life. Payload lands at 240 tons, pushed by a Caterpillar diesel, making roughly 2,400 horsepower, through a mechanical powertrain. 6 forward gears instead of an electric motor. Top speed comes in around 42 miles an hour, quick enough that a loaded 793 can out-accelerate some empty diesel-electric rivals on a flat haul road. The trade-off is real. Mechanical drivetrains need more scheduled maintenance than diesel-electric ones, but they're cheaper to buy and simpler to fix, with parts a mine's own shop already stocks. That's the whole argument this segment keeps having: electric simplicity against mechanical familiarity. And the 793 is the strongest case for the mechanical side. A loaded 793F tips the scale at close to 430 tons, about the weight of a fully loaded Boeing 747. It stretches nearly 44 feet nose to tail, with a dump body riding almost 25 feet off the ground, tall enough that the driver in the cab looks down onto the roof of a 2-story building. Step up to the Komatsu 930E, and you're in true heavy hauler territory. It's the truck Komatsu builds for pits, where the 830E doesn't have the muscle, but a 400-ton giant is overkill. The workhorse tier that keeps a mine's tonnage numbers up without the fuel bill of the very largest trucks. Introduced as a scaled-up sibling to the 830E, it borrowed the same diesel-electric formula and simply made everything bigger. Payload climbs to 290 tons, carried on a frame powered by an engine making close to 2,600 horsepower and driven through electric wheel motors, the same architecture as the 830E, just scaled up rather than redesigned. Top speed holds around 40 miles an hour fully loaded. One detail that stuck with me researching this one: Komatsu didn't chase a bigger single engine to get here. It leaned on the electric drivetrain's ability to handle more current, which is cheaper and faster to engineer than building a whole new diesel platform. That's the quiet advantage of diesel-electric trucks. The growth path is mostly electrical, not mechanical. Loaded, a 930E pushes past 500 tons of combined truck and cargo, heavier than a fully fueled and boarded Boeing 747. It runs close to 48 feet long, and the top of its dump body sits over 23 feet up, roughly level with a 7-story building's lower setback. Hitachi doesn't get the same name recognition as Komatsu or Caterpillar in this weight class, but the EH5000AC-3 competes directly with both. Hitachi built it around an AC, alternating current, electric drive system, a step up from the older DC motors that rival diesel-electric trucks had leaned on for years. AC drive runs cooler, needs less maintenance on the motors themselves, and delivers power more efficiently at low speed, exactly the conditions a loaded truck grinding up a haul road spends most of its time in. Payload sits at 300 tons, delivered through a diesel making somewhere north of 2,600 horsepower, feeding Hitachi's own AC wheel motors. Top speed comes in around 40 miles an hour. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Switching from DC to AC drive wasn't just an efficiency play, it also cut weight in the drivetrain itself, which meant more of the truck's total capacity could go toward payload instead of hauling its own motors around. That's a few extra tons of ore per load, multiplied across tens of thousands of cycles a year, the kind of margin that decides which truck a mine actually orders. Fully loaded, an EH5000AC-3 weighs in around 520 tons, more than the steel and everything else inside a fully rigged Airbus A380. It measures roughly 48 feet long and stands about 23 feet tall at the body, tall enough that a loaded dump body clears most highway overpasses by less than a foot. Every list like this needs one machine that shouldn't have worked, and the Terex Titan is it. Built in 1974, only one was ever made. Terex wanted to prove a mining truck could carry more than 300 tons, and rather than design a new engine from scratch, engineers bolted in a 16-cylinder locomotive engine, borrowed straight from a diesel-electric train. It worked, spectacularly, and then it never worked again anywhere else, because nobody could justify building a second one. Payload topped out at 317 tons, staggering for 1974, powered by a locomotive engine making around 3,300 horsepower, an engine meant to pull a train, repurposed to push wheels. The catch: all that low-end locomotive torque came with a ceiling of about 30 miles an hour, slower than trucks a third its size, because the drivetrain was never built to spin that fast. Here's the take that might get some pushback from purists. The Titan wasn't really an engineering triumph so much as a stunt that happened to actually run, and Terex let the idea sit for another decade before anyone built a true production successor. It still worked in the pit for years afterward, hauling coal at Sparwood, British Columbia. Until it was retired into a roadside attraction, tourists still climb on today. Look at the front tire on the Titan, and you're looking at the widest tire ever mounted on a mining truck at the time, over 8 feet across at the tread. Engineers had to design custom rubber compounds just to keep it from overheating under 300 tons of cargo. It's the detail that made the Titan a curiosity even among people who'd never heard of the truck itself. For decades, Caterpillar built its reputation on mechanical drivetrains, then broke its own pattern with the 795 FAC. This is CAT's answer to the diesel-electric giants from Komatsu and Hitachi. The same AC electric wheel motor layout, but paired with an engine CAT had never put in a truck before. The C17520, a 20-cylinder engine built for the biggest machines in CAT's lineup. It marked the moment CAT stopped treating diesel-electric as someone else's technology and started competing on it directly. Payload lands around 350 tons, and the number that actually surprises people is the engine, close to 4,000 horsepower from that C17520, one of the most powerful diesel engines ever fitted to a haul truck at the time it launched. Top speed sits near 40 miles an hour loaded. What strikes us about the 795 is less the raw horsepower and more the timing. CAT launched it specifically to compete for the ultra-heavy segment that Liebherr and BelAZ were starting to own, which tells you how much pressure the top of this market puts on manufacturers to keep scaling up, year after year, ton after ton. Loaded, a 795 FAC weighs close to 600 tons total, more than a fully loaded Airbus A380, with a second aircraft's worth of cargo stacked on top. It runs nearly 48 feet long, and the dump body towers roughly 25 feet overhead, tall enough to hide a 2-story house behind it. The Caterpillar 797F holds a title none of the diesel-electric giants can claim. It's the largest mechanical drive haul truck ever built. Every other machine at this weight uses electric motors at the wheels. CAT went the other way, engineering a mechanical powertrain strong enough to handle 400 tons of payload without a single electric motor in the drivetrain, a genuinely different answer to the same problem everyone else solved with electricity. Payload reaches 400 tons, moved by that same C17520 engine, making roughly 4,000 horsepower. but this time driving the wheels through a mechanical transmission instead of generators and motors. Top speed comes in around 42 miles an hour, noticeably quicker than most diesel-electric rivals at this weight, because mechanical drivetrains respond faster than electric ones. Would you have guessed the biggest mechanical drive truck on Earth is also one of the fastest in its class? That's the trade-off nobody mentions. CAT's engineers had to prove a gearbox could survive 400 tons of repeated shock loading, something most manufacturers had already written off as impossible above 350 tons. The tires on a 797F stand taller than most adult humans stacked on each other's shoulders, just over 13 feet across, the largest tires ever manufactured for a vehicle when CAT introduced them. A single tire alone weighs more than a small car, and replacing one on site takes a purpose-built crane crew most of a working day. Liebherr built the T284 to do one thing better than anyone else on this list: put more horsepower behind a single haul truck than had ever been done before. It's the direct successor to Liebherr's earlier T282, refined with a bigger engine and a beefed-up AC electric drivetrain, aimed squarely at the handful of mines running the deepest, steepest pits on the planet, where raw power up a grade matters more than almost anything else. Payload sits at 450 tons, and the engine underneath is the real headline. Liebherr fits the T284 with a diesel making close to 3,800 horsepower, among the most powerful engines ever put in a production haul truck. Top speed holds around 40 miles an hour. Most people assume bigger payload automatically means a bigger, heavier truck overall, but the T284 gets there with a comparatively conventional two-axle layout, betting everything on raw power and tire technology, rather than adding extra axles the way its closest rival eventually would. That single design choice is the whole personality of this truck: brute force over structural complexity. A fully loaded T284 pushes past 700 tons combined, heavier than two fully loaded Airbus A380s parked nose to tail. It stretches close to 50 feet long, and its dump body rises roughly 25 feet in the air, tall enough that the cab alone sits higher than most two-story rooftops. Everything on this list has been building toward the BelAZ 75710, the heaviest haul truck ever put into production. Belarus's BelAZ unveiled it in 2013, specifically to beat every record on this list at once, and it succeeded, not with a bigger version of the standard two-axle formula, but by rewriting the formula entirely. Instead of one engine and two axles, the 75710 runs two separate diesel engines and four axles, 8 wheels total, a layout no other truck on this list attempts. Payload reaches 450 metric tons, nearly 500 short tons the way American mines measure it, split across two 16-cylinder engines that together produce something in the neighborhood of 4,600 horsepower. Top speed lands around 40 miles an hour despite the extra weight. Here's the part that doesn't sit right with some engineers I've read on this. Running two full engines instead of one adds real maintenance complexity. Twice the fuel systems, twice the cooling, twice the things that can fail. BelAZ's answer was that the redundancy is worth it at this scale. Lose one engine on a 450-ton truck 1,000 miles from the nearest spare parts warehouse, and you can still limp it back to the shop instead of stranding 500,000 pounds of ore in the middle of a pit. Would this trade-off make sense on a smaller truck? Almost certainly not. It only pays off once a single machine gets this expensive to strand. Fully loaded, a BelAZ 710-7100 weighs close to 810 tons total, heavier than two fully loaded Airbus A380s and then some. It measures nearly 68 feet long, longer than two school buses end to end, and its dump body rises almost 27 feet in the air, tall enough to look a 7-story rooftop nearly in the eye. Walk around to the side of the 75710 and count the wheels, 8 of them, riding on 4 separate axles split into 2 pairs front and back. No other truck in this class runs more than 2 axles. It's the single detail that explains how BelAZ pushed Payload past every rival, without simply scaling up a 2-axle frame until it broke.